welcome to the Cellar. Hang on, it's going to be an interesting one tonight. First, we'll start with the mundane. All right. First comment. Oh, by the way, I hope you like the new. They told me to put my camera down so I didn't look like a hobbit, whatever that means. So I tilted it down a little bit. Is that better? With the old brown books, you could write your character on a 3x5 card. You're right, and that's what we did. Because you know what? Before there were character sheets, that's what we did. And then we Warriors came out with that marvelous character pad of theirs, and we got into it and into the game, and so did some others. But yeah, that was it. And you know, it's a lot harder to invest that kind of emotion and angst in a 3x5 card as compared to an 8x10, I guess, when you have to write out that whole damn story. All right. Now, in response to that, when the 5e came out, I did the same with the Halfling Barbarian. One of the reasons 5e was the first edition since 2e that I'd played. AD&D is still my fave, but I appreciate the nods early 5e did. Yeah, Hasbro wasn't completely stupid, or the Wizards weren't completely stupid when they put all that out. You got to give them credit for what they did get right. All right, now, old school, new school. I love your wisdom and stories of old. Thank you. My daughter, in between uni, works for a gaming store in town. She'll join a fifth edition group in her workplace. What a job. But under my wing, she is old school through and through, yet she is excited about creating her character, backstory, etc. And he goes on to say she has a wonderful imagination and written storytelling skills. It's interesting to listen to her describe the questions the amused look of the 5e players when they are curious and ask questions about the old school game. Well, yeah, I can understand where the appeal to create stories. I mean, hell's bells. Go out and buy a couple, 3 sets of story dice, shake them up in a bag, and pick out 5 and roll them and make up a backstory. It's okay. It's fun to do that, to make up a biography, to make up something out of whole cloth. I understand that. So, that's good. Let's see. Okay. I had run some of her friends through old school play and absolutely loved their faces when they realized their freedom with old school, never needing to look at their character sheet for an answer to a problem. Unfortunately, living in rural, getting anybody together is difficult, so I delve into solo play easily, swapping from DM to player, testing out scenarios, and giving my imagination a stretch. I eagerly await the stories from their 5e games, still confused with the complexity of 5e and bonus actions, etc., etc. Yeah, well, yeah, if you get a good storyteller, a good story is a good story, and I can certainly understand that. Sorry that is not a question, but I hope that the learnings of old can be reflected through the playing of the young and never be forgotten. Absolutely. Pay it down, pass it down. Propagate and promulgate. Oh, and I made a minor error last time. Just a quick note on Quest and Starheart Miniatures, owned and operated by Darcy Perry. Yeah, I almost think Darcy put this in. DQ is a New Zealand, not Australian game company, a much smaller home market and therefore much rarer, so worth the distinction. That said, thanks for mentioning Quest, an excellent rules light OSR example. It is. It's a hoot. I highly recommend it. Get if you've got a regular gaming group, everybody kick $5 into the kitty, or whatever, or $2 every time you get together. Save up for it and get it. It's hilarious. It's well thought out. And it's anthropomorphic, which I absolutely love. And it's rules light, it's fun. In Duck Quest, like I said earlier, your backstory has to be 3 sentences. That's it. That's all you're allowed. None of it. Oh, yeah, that's great. Good day, Tim. Thanks for answering my last question and letting me know it isn't crazy to kick an annoying player out. No, and I think that's something you never leave. Excuse me. You need to never leave. I'll get this in a second. You never want to forget that if you're finding them annoying, chances are some of the other party are finding them annoying. And the old thing about one bad apple spoils the barrel can happen in gaming groups where the DM loses control or just has a jerk that he or she is uncomfortable saying, quit being a jerk or goodbye. But if it was a weekly poker game and there was a jerk, somebody would disinvite him. If it was a weekly tennis get-together, there's so many scenarios where the annoying idiot, the jerk, can be asked to leave because they're bringing down the buzz, the high, the enjoyment of the rest of the group. As someone once famously said, they're harshing the whole group's buzz. Okay. This week I wanted to ask you this question. How would you handle a chase? Say a party on a wagon being chased by pursuers, or maybe running through the forest. I've always wanted to simulate the excitement best described as jet bike scene in Return of the Jedi. And then he adds a PS, I'm going back trying to watch all my videos. Well, you better get cracking because I make a new one every week. In my opinion, making a good chase is next to impossible unless you're willing to set up a mechanism in advance of, tables for dice rolls. If a chase, if those being chased have better horses, they get some advantage. If those chasing it can be done. In my opinion, it's going to take a lot of dice rolls to get any kind of excitement or intense feeling worked up about it. But I think it could be done. However, that sounds more like something a movie maker would be interested in rather than the DM, no offense intended. Just how much detail do you need? Can you abstract that narrow escape, etc., or do you want to play it out? Okay, play it out. If they get close enough to fire weapons, bow, crossbow, whatever, or for you to fire back, you can have your crossbowman climb up on the top of the cart or the stagecoach or in the back of the wagon and give him some severe minuses for doing anything except scaring the hell out of the people that are chasing you. But it could be done. The work involved, I don't know, would be worth the payoff. But that's just my opinion. I'd rather have you being chased through a dungeon by a pack of slavering wolfhounds. That you can do. That you can easily do. All right, I'm about to start refereeing an old school Essentials game for the first time, specifically with an open table and persistent world. And I had some questions that I hope you might be able to answer. Sorry if any of these have been covered before. In a game with persistent time between sessions and multiple groups playing, I imagine that players always have to return to a safe location, such as a town or keep at the end of a session. That's ideal. there are other circumstances and occasions where that doesn't necessarily happen, and that's when your persistent time thing starts to go wonkers, and you have to start keeping a very careful calendar. And you have to put on that calendar where each group or which each individual PC is, so that you know where in time they are. It can get quite intense keeping track of this. Because you might have to camp out. Okay? Or you might have to hole up in a safe room and wait out, until the next day, or, get your spells back, or, whatever. We'll continue here. Assuming this is the case, and I'm not misinformed, are these locations safe from all conflict, unable to be ransacked, fought in, destroyed, etc.? And if not, what would happen to a player character if the place they were staying was destroyed by a faction or another group between sessions? Well, the easiest way is to be a dictator in this event and not let it happen. No. They don't go, they aren't in the same place at the same time. The town they're in is somehow, there's no reason to attack the town that they're in with bandits or something like that. There really isn't a reason. Adventuring should go on pause when you're recuperating and at your safe place. And depending upon how far a level of detail you want to get involved in, you can buy local protection, you can do a lot of different things. But no, I would not do that. Now, there is one or two possible exceptions. If the setting they were playing in was at war, and by random chance that part of the Shire or whatever it was, had a what they used to call those Givon. Anyway, the other guy comes tromping through your Shire, eating everything and burning what he can't eat, and all right, but I personally don't get any joy out of hosing over the players while they're trying to rest and recuperate. I just think that there ought to be a time. Now, there are exceptions. If there's some NPC that has a vendetta and stalks them down, that's tracks them down, stalks them, whatever. That's fine. But no, I wouldn't just have a plague come through, wipe out the town, and allow it to be looted after. No, or anything like that. No. My personal taste. I admit that. Persistent time, though, is why we had 5 or 6 characters. In Gary's world, Greyhawk, different things were going on at different places. Different ruins, different modules we were testing, whatever. And you couldn't be on both sides of the continent at the same time. Same thing here. If you're on a persistent timeline, you have to track where each individual player character is on that timeline. And that means that everybody is on June the 7th. All right? And on June the 7th, if there's an adventure that comes up and this player character is still all bunged up, or that your favorite isn't there and can't get there in time, okay, there's a reason, that's a great reason to have a number of player characters in your stable. Keep in mind that the verb that we most often used back in those days was to run a character, as though we were controlling a puppet. We ran characters. We didn't live them, that's for sure. All right, back in here. I think at the end of a mission, they ought to, end of an adventure, they ought to be able to do what they want. And if they want to rollicky, and with persistent time, if they want to rollick and frolic with their newfound wealth, well, good. With persistent time, they're more likely to run out sooner. You as a DM can see that happens without being, arbitrary about it. And with persistent time, you'll get them off their butts and out of the flesh pots sooner to go back out and adventure some more, because their money will start to evaporate. Let's see, we'll go on here. Factions and all that, I don't get involved. I never have been involved. I've never written for campaign action that has factions where the players are actually fighting against each other. If it's a random thing that happens in a war, it's a random thing, and if your players trust you, they'll understand that. Give you a case in point, and this is with persistent time. The Fight in the Skies board game is very role-playing-ish in that you have a stable of pilots at various periods of time fighting for various factions, and we all did, that were only able to fly certain aircraft that were relevant and pertinent to their time period. And it would sometimes happen that in the abstract part of it, as Mike was doing the week's missions, and we were all assigned to justice or squadrons or whatever, and how he arrived at scenarios was during the dice rolls that he was doing on the abstract. So if nobody that day had a percentage chance, and nobody managed to run into anybody, well, that was one thing. No scenarios there. But when 3 or 4 occurrences happened where squadrons ran into Yastas or whatever, then from that he would devise scenarios based on what had actually happened. 3 on one side, 4 on the other, whatever. We'd get a call from Mike, hey, we're going to play. And off we'd trek, and what period of time, okay, dig out that player character. So that's a game that relies on the persistence of time, and that everybody's on the same day and the same month and what have you. That does that. And believe me, if you play Fight in the Skies a lot, or it's now called Dawn Patrol, if you play it a lot, you will build up characters with impressive records, number of missions flown, etc., etc. Now, they may well be in the abstract, but it's still a mission. All right? And that mission experience thing is important in that game, in that after a few missions, you're no longer a rookie and saddled with some big negatives. So again, persistent time can work to the DM's advantage, and can also be a real headache unless you literally have some big chart with a calendar and where everybody is on a given day, or a big chart, where is everybody today on June 7th. And the encounter is happening over here on June 7th. Only this, that, or that player can possibly take place because there's only one near. And he was especially curious how this might apply to a player's strongholds and potential PvP scenarios. Okay, going back to our old days when we'd retire a player and go out and build a keep, and all that, well, we all had feudal service that we owed somebody. And we occasionally had big battles where we had to bring our men-at-arms. But that wasn't so huge. I don't believe any of it was PvP. I believe it was more NPC versus player type of thing, I believe. I like persistent time, knowing full well that it's a good deal of work to keep track of. Because, another case in point, all right, you get a little banged up. It's determined that it's going to take you 10 days to heal up. Okay? And here it is, June 7th, so you know that you can't do anything before June 17th, no matter where it is. See why it's better to have a stable than just ride one pony? Ride a different pony every day. Let's see. Let's go. I'm wondering how you would approach map sharing between groups in a game. I feel concerned that potentially running an open table where players can adventure with whoever they want might create an issue where new players would very quickly have access to largely complete dungeon maps that other higher level players might have drawn. Is this a realistic problem, or am I worrying over nothing? Is it a potential problem? Yes. Is it realistic? Well, that depends on the chemistry of your group. If you're playing with a lot of suspicious PCs, they've always been suspicious, well, then I would be very surprised that they would share all that information. Just tell the new guy, hey, shut up and follow us. And let him work it out in his own head. Left 100 paces, turn right, 150 paces, turn left. Working out in his own head. It depends on the chemistry. I could certainly see if that circumstance was forced on the higher level, more experienced players, they would resent it, certainly. Now we have this individual has another one. Finally, for mega dungeon centric games, what do players do after conquering the central mega dungeon? Specifically, after retiring whatever character completed the dungeon and rolling a new one. Did the new characters explore the same dungeon again, or was it common to create a new mega dungeon, thus having two or more being run at the same time? Sometime study Greyhawk and the ruins of Greyhawk and tell me if you can figure out how many levels there are. Because however many got published, there were more. It was Gary's habit that certain wings and certain parts in that, before I got there, had nicknames. The orc wing, the goblin wing, or whatever they called it, but the orc area, the goblin area. And when you cleaned out all the goblins, yay, you went back and you celebrated and you leveled up and all that. But in the meantime, what used to be the goblin area is now the hobgoblin area because a troop of hobgoblins has moved in there. So sometimes you have, as it happened, there were some in Lake Geneva that didn't strictly adhere to outside knowledge distinctions and just go, okay, follow me, and off they went. And even though that character hadn't been there, that player had been in there 4 times already, that's hard to get around. You got to have some cave-ins and some new diggings and every now and again. But you don't have to build another mega dungeon. Clean out a wing of the dungeon, fine. Go clean out another wing of the dungeon, and that first wing, if you want, can be re-inhabited. If you want, as a DM, you can have a mega dungeon that is never 100% completely free of bad guys or evil influences or ill intent or, whatever. Or if you play the other side of the coin. Okay. But you don't, oh my God, one mega dungeon's enough. And I've seen some mega dungeons that are just mind-numbingly, eye-wateringly big. And in my opinion, they're way bigger than what you need. Now, Gary's Greyhawk was big. And I'm not holding up as St. Gary, even though I am making this on his 85th birthday. But as an example that I've not found a better one of, one enormous dungeon with all these wings at different levels and different directions and sub-dungeons and all that. Once you get that, that's about all you need. It was my understanding that most of that got mapped out in the first year or year and a half during testing and fooling around before I got there. And a small portion of it, no more than a quarter, was probably created after I got there. So, Gary was making up new levels, and he told me, hey, I realized one day, oh, this brilliant work I put into this other thing. A cave in here, a new digging over there. I can use the same thing again and again and just repopulate it with other creatures. And I think that's a genius idea, not because Gary had it, but because once you create a mega dungeon, why do you need a new one? Because when you say mega dungeon, when I refer to a mega dungeon, I'm talking 35 or 40 or more levels, and sub dungeons and sub levels off of them. A person that I used to work with created a mega adventure, a big two-parter, that got down to the watch rotation schedules of who was guarding that wing. Okay, if you want to get into that level of detail, that's fine. Or just know that that area was guarded by such and such. All right. Okay, question. Hard to kill points versus hit points. I just want to exercise an invasive thought I've been having on hit points as hard to kill points. If hit points is the ability to avoid the killing blow, then shouldn't some situations foes induce a loss of hit points simply by existing? For example, an 8-armed foe appears with a weapon in each hand. Take one-third hit points off due to the superiority of your foe. Well, I'll stop there. And then there's more. All right. If you wish to assess the scare level of a foe, you could, by simply giving minuses to the player character to hit because he's so scared he's shaken. If it's that great a level of fear you've induced, or panic, or whatever, you can simply make him easier to hit. Same thing. He's not thinking straight, acting slow. Bash, bash. All of a sudden, the 5th or 6th armor he's wearing becomes a 7 or an 8. For the purposes of this fight, where he's, worried about wetting himself. There's ways to do that if you wish. I've done it. I once had I wrote an adventure that it looks like might get republished by another company for an old Gary Con, first or second one, that had a really ugly surprise in it. And I wrote into it a mechanism for determining just how surprised and stunned the party was likely to be. And that particular encounter was a killer. Because what they confronted was so horrifying, so, oh my God, we're doomed, that they ended up being doomed. There's ways to do it. You can, surprise isn't a D6 roll. in my opinion. Not enough variety, not enough range. If I tell you roll a d20 and you roll a 4, you're pretty damn surprised. Whereas you rolled a 17, you probably weren't very surprised at all. There's ways to use that are completely random and no guilt sticks to your fingertips. My conclusion ahead of your comment: are there other mechanisms that we use to establish advantages for supernormal superiority? Well, yes, I just described some. However, I thought that this argument was a good illustration of why it's important to think of hit points as more than simply martial physical survival instinct or skill. Since if hit points was just the ability to avoid the killing blow, then one could implement fluctuating hit point totals depending upon the superiority of the foe. If you want to do that, knock yourself out. Hey, knock yourself out. I prefer to just give some minuses due to the effect that the foe had upon them. How many minuses depends on the effect. I don't care. I don't think you should screw around with hit points. Up and down. Hit points are hit points are hit points. Hit points are hard earned. That's why everybody hates a level drain. They lose hit points. Alright? Don't screw with that figure, that number, whatever you want to call them. Don't. I don't think that's a good idea. I still think it's the ability, it's what I think. By now, on to something new. By now, the keen-eyed of you will have noticed that I'm wearing a new lid tonight. It says Scientific Barbarian. It's the post-apocalyptic magazine for players of that type of RPG. I know, because I helped edit the first several of them, getting it off the ground. It's fascinating stuff. It's made me interested in playing it, just editing it. They are available on the Mud Puppy Games, or the link is in the comments at the beginning. So, by all means, if you're a fan of the Scientific Barbarian, they're a limited number because it's a gamble to see if anybody wants one. So, grab one. I don't know how much they cost because this was a gift. All right. Next page. Character classes. Where did they come from? How essential is character class to tabletop RPGs? Well, now, what are we going to call character classes? As far as I'm concerned, there are 3. Magic users, fighting men or women, and clerics. Everything else is a variation on one of those, and in most cases, the proliferation is ludicrous and completely unnecessary. How many types of a crusader do you need to differentiate? Come on. I believe there's 4 or 5. That's... No. A barbarian is a fighting man. He's a barbarian because he's ignorant, or he uses a club instead of whatever reason. He's still a fighting man. I don't think there's any problem at all with lumping everything into basically 4 categories. Fighting men, magic users, clerics, and NPCs. Let's be simple where we can be simple here, huh? Let's not clog this up with 37 different kinds of, 37 different variations on a fighting man. All of that crap can be worked into the individual with the DM. As a DM, I wouldn't allow, I allow a druid, because that's a variation on a cleric. I'd never have an assassin or a monk. But I allow, thieves are great because they're a variation on a fighting man. Now, they may not be much of a fighting man if you think of the wild-haired thief with the 2 daggers in the Conan movie. But, okay, I personally don't believe there needs to be a whole galaxy of player types and everybody gets a little something special. If you want to get a little something special, go out and adventure and earn something special. Have something great happen to you. Have a boon given to you by a demigod or something like that. All right, let's go. There should be some differentiation. Okay, there should be some differentiation between the primary mode of existence of the player character. There should be. Was the inclusion of character class in Blackmore D&D a function, Blackmore/D&D a function of RPGs coming out of miniature war games? Possibly that had an influence on it. However, in miniature war games, we didn't have anything but heroes and superheroes. And wizards came along later. And I don't know that clerics were ever in. And when I say where they came from, it was chainmail. Chainmail were the only rules available then, and that's what Minneapolis played, and that's what Lake Geneva played, and that's what Chicago used. The 3 main Midwestern gaming groups during that period of time, they used chainmail. And so there were heroes and superheroes, 2 levels, and there were magic users that could do things, and so it all came out of there, yes. Just like there were lots of other things that I'm sure Dave and Gary read that influenced them. But you have to remember that it is an outgrowth of chainmail. So, yes. Is the main function of character class to inject variety into playstyle, or as a support of the notion of role-playing? Yeah, let's not forget role-playing. When we sit down at the table, we're there to play a role. And if you choose to be a cleric, then how good a cleric can you be within the restraints and constraints of what a cleric can do in D&D? Or how good a fighter, whatever. But you're there to play a role. Everybody can't be everything. And we deal with that here in a little bit too, that concept. Do you think there's another way to do what character classes do without them, but still keep it simple? Why not use the methods of differentiation, say as propensity to certain forms of action? Roll on a table cross-referenced by stats to define the actions each PC leans more towards. A propensity to cast magic, a propensity to solve mechanical problems and puzzles, a propensity to rash but skillful violence. No. I can't have a magic user. I can't have a fighter with a propensity to throw a minor spell every once in a while, or say some prayer that he learned from the lips of a dying high priest. No, you follow that path in life. That is your vocation. Now, as a magic user, you can try to dress in such a... I don't expect all wizards running around in pointy hats and long robes with stars and half moons on them. No, that's silly. Now, if you want to be a high-level, magic user and sit up in the top of your tower when you reach 17th level and wear a robe that falls down to your ankles that's blue velvet stitched with suggestive pictures of bugbears, that's your thing. Knowing, of course, that if you walk out of your tower wearing that, people are going to go, at the very least, weirdo. And worst case, oh, got a magic user, stone him. Or run. Nah, I don't like that idea. I think part of role playing is sticking to your role. Not only following your alignment, but also doing what, wizards don't go out and have sword fights with bad guys. Forget Gandalf and the Balrog. That's Tolkien. That's a story. Within the purview of this game, wizards don't do that. Now, if you want to go play another game and let wizards do that, that's fine. But I think you're screwing around with the balance of the original. My opinion. Let's see. In terms of class distinctions, players have the freedom to set their characters apart from other PCs and NPCs in their chosen class. Some may play it right, others lose. Well, play it tight, others lose, adding personality and foibles that entertain themselves in a party or the group. Perhaps character classes are best seen as different ways to enter the sandbox, with a bucket and a spade, a rake, pail of water, etc. Well, that's as good a way, I guess, as any to look at it. Those are the tools you take to it, and those are the tools you get to use. Period. The only player characters that get a new set of tools are people that are striking to become thieves. Okay, here we go. This is an interesting one that I spent some time actually thinking about this. Are magical weapons traceable in a pseudo-forensic sense? In other words, the PCs are charged with investigating a murder. Is it possible to sense incriminating details from the damage caused by a magic weapon? Yes. I believe that you prefer to issue very few magical items. Yes. And most of those with a modest pluses at that. Yes. But in terms of a module hook, how reasonable do you think it is to allow PCs, or certain PCs with magical abilities, say, to discern distinguishing features of the weapon used on the victim? Could they determine a famous magical weapon, for example? Okay, I hardly know where to begin here. Sure they could. You're the DM, they could. Perhaps I hate where I'm going with this, but the way we used to do it, if you wanted to say that you had a special knack or a skill, you said you had it, and you rolled, and if you made it, whatever the roll was set to be, and you did that a couple of more times, then you really did have a knack, and you started getting pluses and things like that, and that's how you became good at that. Before there were thieves, that's what we did. Who picked the lock the last time? Try it again. Oh, you did it again? Wow. Who picked the lock? Try it again. 3 times? Oh, man. And all of a sudden now you're the lock picker. You got some pluses. You're getting, that's the way we used to do it. But, you can do it however you want. You could have someone that through study, a magic user, through study. Because remember, as a DM, you should encourage your magic users and you should encourage your clerics, but particularly your magic users, to come up with new prayers or spells. My campaign, we had 8 or 10 variations on a fireball. They did research, they paid money, yada da da da, and all of a sudden they got a fireball that is contained to about a 1-foot globe, great for lighting campfires or setting the haymow on fire. Didn't blow down the whole barn. Of course, the fire might have taken it out, but that's neither here nor there. Thank you. Where was I? Oh, so you could allow someone who's they're given a quest. That sounds like a quest type of thing. Go find out who did this. So they go, and there's an aura, there's a dweemer around the wound, about the person, that makes you believe, then yes, they do believe it. It is true. This was done by a magical weapon. Now, whether it was a magical rapier, oh, he's poked full of little tiny holes and leaking juice, or it was an axe, oh, half his head is gone, there would still be a lingering trace that could be discernible, I guess. Why not? It's your game. Your world. Why not? And if you don't want it in your world, it's your world. Why should you have it if you don't want it? Now, I'm not telling DMs they got to allow everything in they want. No way. Or they don't want it. I'm not saying that. Just put in what you want. Yeah, it's okay. That wouldn't, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If it were a notorious magical weapon that, like a flaming sword that not only lopped off heads, it cauterized the neck shut, wouldn't take a genius go, oh, head over here, torso over here, both of them sealed with burns. Hot weapon of some sort. Sure, why not? Okay. Where did the 1-minute round and 10-minute turn come from? Page 38 in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I mean, that's where it is, first edition. Because I went and looked. It came via chainmail, and I hunted around for a little while to find my copy of chainmail, and I couldn't find it, and I gave up. All I could find was that shitty version that the Wizards did, and tried to make it into something it wasn't. Tried to make it into individual combat. When I was done, a couple of companies did better versions of that. Anyway, I believe it came out of chainmail. I believe the length of the turns came out of chainmail, and the segments might have been house ruled or might have been created for the game. I don't know that one. It had been done when I got there, and that was not anything that Gary and I ever spoke about. And as I've said before, Dave Morrison and I never talked about anything. He didn't talk to me at all. So I would imagine the breakdown, 6 to a turn, 10 minutes to a thing, gave you time to, the segments gave you time to, determine when a spell would go off and things like that. Yeah, 10-minute turn, 1-minute round. If unless you're the fat guy in the Knights of the Dinner Table, with all his, uber powerful wizards, Brian, You don't walk around with spells online ready to be thrown. So how long does it take you? How many seconds does it take you? 6 seconds in each segment. That's where it came from. You have to look at the combat and the allocation of who goes when as seeing a dance with a stroboscope. Click, what are they doing? 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 And during those clicks, those are the seconds you get to act. Okay. I promise you an interesting. So this is the good part. I happen to know a fly that was on the wall in a recent bankruptcy hearing. The person appointed by the court, or whatever the position is of the person that takes depositions and all that, didn't buy a whole bunch of crap that has been done by the owner of the Dungeon Hobby Shop. Assets swapped around, assets missing, gone. I'm just telling what was the gist of many of the questions during this. Because there were wages owed and who owned this and who owned that, and silly, stupid claims made on the part of the people in Lake Geneva. And now the cows are coming home to roost. I might have even heard something about back in South Carolina being in trouble for something they were selling out of the back of one of the stores, but I'm not sure. Anyway, there were several occasions to try to, there were several attempts made to hide assets, is the gist of what I'm getting, none of which managed to pass this guy's eagle eyes. Good. The sooner the hobby is shut of Justin Onasa, the sooner we can start cleaning our souls again and trying to wash the stink off of us. And I understand that he's putting the Dungeon Hobby Shop up for sale. I would love to see it become a true not-for-profit, but unfortunately it's going to take a lot of Gitas to buy that property, being on a corner on the main, one of the two main drags, etc., etc. It's a very valuable property just for the land itself. Now, throughout this, he's had a crony, who I will name by name because of what he did to me, named Michael Hovermail. Now, this individual has changed directions like a flag in the wind. One day he's, Justin's terrible. The next day he's perjuring himself on behalf of him. He also lies to everybody else. I believe this is his LinkedIn game designer, Wizard Towered Games. Now that's not him, that's Don Samora, who I'm involved with. Contract. He claims that for D20 Delving, he collaborated and consulted on all game elements, including writing, rules, editing, board design, card design, game pieces, artwork, acquiring, here's the one that gets me, which is absolutely a blatant falsehood, acquiring celebrity talent Tim Kask, and all other areas from concept to completion. Horse shit. Horse shit. I made some changes. And he sure as hell was not consulted. That's a blatant lie. Take it down. I know that Don Samora is planning a public statement disavowing anything that this guy had to do with this game. Now, if this isn't bad enough, there's a PDF document the bankruptcy court released of Habermehl's and Lanassa's chats. Not flattering at all. In it, Habermehl and Lanassa pretty much slam you, Menser, Luke, Duck, and a ton of others for not joining them. Also, in it, he did not redact all your phone numbers and emails. So, this slimeball released my phone number and my email. Because I wouldn't play with him. He's only tried to sidle up to me a couple of times since all the shit dumpster fire in Lake Geneva started, trying to suck up and get on the good side. And now he releases my phone number and email? There's a special, well, all right. He's mad at Samora, obviously. Samora was a party to the bankruptcy with a claim for unpaid wages before the hearing. So was Habermehl, who then went into the hearing, turned his story around entirely, and lied. There's nothing Lanassa can call me that he hasn't already called me. Any accusation viler than any of the ones he's already made. And to release phone numbers, I believe they call that doxing. And I believe there's laws against that in various states. So I may have to look into that. So anyway, back to where the fly on the wall was watching all this. It was a bad day for Justin Orlanasti. A bad day. I think he's trying to become a new Ken Whitman in our hobby. I know he's said vile things to me, and I'm still here, so it must not have had a whole lot of effect. But he's not gone yet. He's trying to say that this game property is owned by, he's shifting, and the dude from the bankruptcy court didn't buy it. So I'm waiting to hear the next round and see what happens. New TSR. Guess they've been mad at me since the day I told them there's no way you're not TSR. But anyway, I got to see what legal recourse I have for him releasing my phone numbers and stuff like that, because that's considered private information in just about every court there is. In the meantime, Gen Con's coming up real soon here. And let's see, after Gen Con, the next thing of note is that I'm going to is Gamehole. Oh, and as a side note, I went out and I bought, I've arranged to buy, and I'm going back Monday to get it, a mobility scooter that I can take apart and put in my car and take to the cons, because I just can't do the walking, all the distances walking, because of the effects of the chemo on my feet. So I think I finally solved that issue, and good. Doesn't mean I'm going to more cons, it just means I'll be nicer when you see me. And on that good note, I will bid you all Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree,
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.